For the first time ever on this channel, I have been bamboozled. I've been hoodwinked and I have been lied to in regards to one thing. This book right here, Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman. Where do I begin? This book was pitched to me as Dark Souls and Elden Ring in literary form. It is not. I will just put that out there. If someone tells you that that is what this book is, they are lying. It is not true. It shares very close similarities with a few things, but overall, they could not be more different. The things that they share are demonic elements, monsters, overall kind of a creepy, dark tone. But besides that, nothing else is really there in terms of the connection between Dark Souls and Between Two Fires. So what is this book about? Well, this book follows a banished knight and a young girl named Delphine, and she has some kind of like angel witch powers almost. She's not like a normal person. She's definitely a very like supernatural kind of character that really develops as the book goes and gets more, outlandish and kind of crazy in what she can do. But when you first meet her, she is just kind of a regular, normal girl. And then you also have Father Machu, and he is the priest in the group. And so that rounds out the trio that you will be following as you read this book. Now, my favorite character in this is obviously the banished knight, Thomas, and he has the best backstory. He's pretty badass. He carries a giant sword. He cuts shit in half. He's like the stereotypical muscle, sword-wielding fantasy character that you'd expect to find in something like this. But he doesn't even live up to that kind of character, if that makes sense. This book has some awesome things in it. You have some very dark moments. You have very high highs. Overall, this book has stuff that you would want to read and be interested in. But besides that, when you get away from the dark monsters, that kind of stuff, it really doesn't hold up. This book is very well written, but I don't think it's a good book. And I do feel like I was lied to with this book. You definitely, the opening chapter was fantastic. One of my favorites of anything I've ever read. It hooked me from the beginning and I was like, oh my God, we are in for a serious treat here. I love, journey trio stories about people walking across, destroyed lands. And in this case, it's medieval France. And so I was hooked. I liked all those elements. I really thought that this was going to be something that I would love. Of course, I was wrong. This book is not great. I hate to say it. It's well written. Again, I don't think Christopher Buehlman is a bad author. I actually think he's a fantastic author. I actually think he's very well written. I think that he wrote a pretty solid book here. Did it work for me? No. The world building in this centers almost entirely around Christianity. So for someone like me who's not extremely well versed in all things Christianity, I felt lost a lot of times while reading this book. This is one of those classic examples of an author who doesn't explain anything. I felt like the entire time I was reading this book, I was an outsider looking in. I felt like they were telling the story and living and going about their lives in this crazy world. And I was just on the sidelines watching, and I saw a couple cool things. But besides that, half the shit that they were talking about, I did not understand, genuinely. And that's a shame. And I don't know if that's a personal thing. I've read a bunch of other Goodreads reviews and things like that from other people. And a lot of people have said the same thing. So I don't know if it's just me, but I definitely felt like this book just didn't care to explain anything. And that's such a shame because the amount of times that he uses words and locations and descriptions for things and just like all these world building elements, like as if you know everyone. I mean, he will throw out names and locations and places and whatever else just left and right, expecting that you know it, but you don't. Or at least I didn't. I didn't feel like I knew many things, in this story. Like it just felt like so much went over my head. And maybe I could have read it closer, but I feel like when I'm reading a book that I'm not attached to and I'm not interested in, and I don't really care about what is happening to the characters, it doesn't matter how closely I read it, I'm just not going to enjoy it. You can't force something like that. You can't force the enjoyment of a book. And to me, that's what this was. I wanted to enjoy it. I really, really did. I liked how the magic system, it's not really magic system, but essentially evil, sin, bad things, they influence the world. And acts of goodness and kindness and doing the right thing also influences the world. So that was an interesting aspect of this book. I loved, like I said, I love the journey. I love the trio. I love stories where you have like a weathered hero looking after like a young apprentice. I like stuff like that. It had all of the right elements for this to be a good book that I would thoroughly enjoy, but I just didn't. And I don't know what that is, I do know what it is. Again, I just think that the fact that it didn't explain anything, and it seemed to drag and it seemed to meander and it just seemed to shift to all these different POVs that it's like, I don't really care about this person. I want to see the trio. I want to know this. And then it would go to a flashback that I just wasn't really invested in all that much. It just was confusing, to be honest. Just a very confusing book. And it just didn't have the payoff to make that journey worth it. This is also a self-published book by Christopher Buehlman, or maybe like hybrid, but it's not traditionally published. You can notice, you can see that it doesn't have a publisher on the spine, doesn't have a publisher anywhere on this book. For a self-published book, it looks fantastic. But for the quality of it, yeah, you can kind of start to see some aspects of it where it doesn't feel like another person looked over it or anything else like that. It's tough. It doesn't have that quality that you would expect, even though it is a very well-written book in a way. Again, if you're like big into Christianity and things like that, I think you might find this more interesting than I did and might understand more. And I am interested in all that stuff, but it just didn't work for me. Now I understand like why a publisher has not picked this up, or I think it was published before and then went out of print, something like that. But it makes sense that this is a self-published book. And I think maybe if I had gone into it knowing that before, I think I would have maybe had a little bit better of a time with it. I think I was just expecting too much from it. And again, it's not to knock self-published books. I have a self-published book, but it's just that it's like you can tell with this one specifically that this was just Christopher Buehlman throwing stuff at a wall, and I don't know. Maybe it could have been edited. It could have been changed. Just a lot of stuff could have, I don't know. So another thing that I struggled with was just picturing things, imagining what the book looked like. His writing, it has good description in it, but the prose, something about the prose just was jarring. It just didn't flow well. The way he broke up paragraphs, it felt like he was trying to be our boy Cormac McCarthy, but it wasn't working. Like, I don't know if I can find an example, but if you read it, you'll know what I'm saying. The way that the paragraphs are broken up, where he puts one word or two words on one line, and then he'll do that down the page, and it's like, it doesn't follow like the conventional writing styles. And I don't know if that's entirely what contributed to me not really getting this or enjoying it or not being able to picture very well, but I couldn't, like, my imagination just felt like it was off for half this book because it didn't flow. It was such a difference from going from Name of the Wind to this, because Name of the Wind, I felt like I was just watching a movie in my head. And with this, I was really struggling to imagine what this world looked like and things like that. And again, he has good description in some aspects, but overall, I just think that it was either his prose or his writing style or whatever else. I just could not get behind it. And I just could not fully be invested in this story and fully see in my head what was going on in this world. So I don't really know what else to say. Honestly, this is just going to be a shorter video. I'm a little bit disappointed with this. I'm sad that this might be my first official dud. It has some high points. There are some things that will stick with me that I really enjoyed, actually. But as a whole, viewing this as a whole piece of literature, just did not hold up for me. Didn't land for me, didn't hit its mark, didn't quite work. Pretty sad. I thought that this was going to be insane. And so, yeah, it just didn't live up to the hype for me, sadly. Now, all of that being said, if you're going into this for the Dark Souls influence like I was, no. Don't do it. Again, it has those aspects in there that will remind you maybe of some of those games, but I definitely feel like there has to be a better book out there. And if there's not, I'm going to write something that feels like Dark Souls because I want something like that. And this it didn't do it for me. Again, has a few things in there, but overall, if you're looking for Dark Souls in book form, no, this is not it. Now, if you're looking for a heavily Christian-inspired theological story that takes place in a medieval horror land with a lot of French references and locations and things like that, then yeah, you might enjoy this. But again, I just feel as if the writing style was very jarring, and I think it's going to be worth checking out another of Christopher Buehlman's work, specifically The Black-Tongued Thief or The Daughter's War or whatever that is. I will definitely check him out in some capacity, and see if his writing style is what I'm looking for, if it just doesn't work with me specifically. But in this, it specifically did not work. So take that as you will. I'm going to have to rate this book 5.5 out of 10 if I can do that. I mean, I want to give it a 6, but I just think for the aspects that I enjoyed of it, the other things that I just did not enjoy and did not vibe with just brought this whole book down for me. And so that's why I'm going to give it, 5.5. I want to give it a 6, but I just can't. It's probably going to be my lowest rated book of all time on this channel. I'm really sad that it didn't work for me. And I'm sorry, guys, if you were hoping that this would be, a little bit better of a review in terms of liking it and things like that. But I'm always honest with you guys. I always want to be honest. I always want to tell you guys how it is. I never want to lie about how I felt about a book just because, I felt like, I needed to enjoy this because everyone else said it's so great. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to tell you guys my honest thoughts. And if I like a book, I love it. If I don't, I don't. And I'm just, going to give you guys honest feedback. So that does it for Between Two Fires. Let me know what you guys thought. If you loved it, I'm so happy you did because I can see why some people might really enjoy this. But if you didn't enjoy it, then I can also see why that was the case. And whatever you decide, please let me know what you think of it, what you thought while you were reading it, if you plan on reading it, things like that. Love to hear from you guys about that. Now, as far as what I'm reading next, I bet you guys will be very happy to see this. This is the first book in the Stormlight Archive, The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I am very, very excited to read this, but I am also incredibly worried because this book is kind of just divisive. I've heard a lot of different things about it. I've heard that it is amazing. It's one of the best fantasy books out there. It's an incredible opening to this world that Brandon Sanderson has created, and you really can't top it in terms of epic fantasy in the modern day. But I have also heard that it is incredibly slow. It feels like a giant prologue, and it just meanders and meanders and meanders and doesn't really pay off in a substantial way to make it feel like it deserved to have that much in there. And for the page count, especially, this is a massive, massive book. I've got the hardcover right here. I also picked it up on Kindle so that I don't have to lug this thing around when I'm not home. And it's pretty big. It's a gigantic book. And I'm worried that it is going to be one of those where I just didn't feel like the journey was worth it for how massive it is. And that a lot of people say too that you can cut down 100, 200 pages of it and it would still be the same great book. So I am a bit worried about that. But that being said, from all the amazing other things that I've heard about it, why not give it a try? why not? Why not just go for it? Why not see what happens and go from there? And I think I will enjoy this, actually, because the same friend who recommended for me to read The Name of the Wind, he also told me I have to read this. I've heard it countless times from you guys. I've heard it countless times from my followers on Instagram. I've heard it countless times from just any fantasy fan across the world. Seriously, I've heard it from all sorts of people that this book is great. So I am really, really hoping it lands for me. And I think it will. I'm going into it with a positive mindset. I'm not going to overhype it because I'm coming off this book and I obviously did enjoy it. And so this one, I'm going to meter my expectations just a little bit and see what happens. Just going to go into it with an open mindset, try and enjoy it for what it is, and hopefully give you guys a good review on that. I really hope I do enjoy this, and I hope, I can deliver something that's worth you guys watching, especially since I picked up all the hardcovers. I literally have every single hardcover back there. I even have them all on Kindle because they're on sale the other day. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. And even if I don't enjoy it, I'm still going to read all of them. And I think even tying that back into Between Two Fires, that was the most frustrating part, is that he told the story in a way that like you're supposed to pick up on it, but he doesn't overtly tell you anything. This is a standalone book. There is nothing after that. So you don't have time to like learn and develop and like get into a rhythm. Whereas something like even The Way of Kings, I think Brandon Sanderson is more open with his exposition and explaining things to you, which I think I'm going to really like. Personally, that's how I enjoy reading books. I'm not like against exposition. I like exposition if it's done in the proper way. I like to learn things. I like to dive deep into the worlds and like absorb as much as I can and have things explained. Like I'm not the type of reader who just enjoys like fumbling around in the dark, figuring my way around the world. That doesn't really work for me. A lot of times it just feels like I'm wasting my time. So I think that this will definitely work in that regard from what I've heard. But even if I don't fully enjoy The Way of Kings to start, I'm not going to give up on it. I am going to read eventually all the other books, just like I do with any other series. I mean, if Between Two Fires had a sequel book, I'd probably read it just to see the culmination, just to see where he was going, all that stuff. So that's just the reader I am. Even if I didn't fully enjoy that first book, I'm still probably going to pick them all up. I'm still going to read through the rest of them. That's what I'm going to do with Red Rising. That's what I'm going to go with Dune. I mean, I didn't love those books particularly, but I'm still going to read through the series and see what it has to offer. So even if Way of Kings doesn't work, I'm still going to read it. I'm still going to go through all of it. And Wind and Truth is coming out, I think this week when I'm recording this video. I don't know if that'll be the case. I think it'll already be out when this is released. But with the release of that book, I'd like to kind of pair my reading of this series and eventually the review of this book with all of that hype that's going on around the Stormlight Archive right now. I think a lot of people will be talking about it. I think the internet will be on fire regarding different things. So I just would like to kind of get in on that hype just for my own enjoyment. I love when people are talking about the things that I'm reading. I felt like I've missed the boat on a lot of different stuff so far. Even though people are still reading all these classics, I was not reading them like as they were coming out. So I think it would be really cool to jump into this series and see people talking about it. And, if I hear a name here or there, it's like, oh, I know what they're talking about. Things like that. So I just don't want to be completely in the blind. I think that this is going to be one of the biggest fantasy releases of the modern, era, and I want to be a part of it. So why not start now? So that's about it for today's video. Way of Kings is up next. I hope it's good. Looking forward to it. If you guys have read The Way of Kings, please let me know what you guys thought, and I would love to talk about it in the comments, and hopefully it's not too much hype because I don't want to be disappointed by this, but if you loved it or hated it, please let me know either way. I'd love to talk about it and just see what you guys are saying about it. So like I said, that does it for today's video. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like. And if you want to see more like it, please subscribe. Got a couple more coming out to you guys later. And we got a good busy release schedule for December. And then I will plan on doing a end of the year, which will be technically released in January, where I will be talking about every single book I have ever read, and I will be ranking all of them. So That's going to be a massive video. That's going to be like my end of the year video. But again, it's going to be released a little bit later, but I'm super excited to get that out to you guys. And then I've got 2 other videos that will be coming in December before that. But that pretty much does it for today's video. And as always, happy reading and writing, and I'll see you guys next time.